Supermen.
Good evening. Hello, hello. We've written a big lump of story and music, and we'd like to play the whole thing for you tonight. It tells of how a large black cloud descends into Times Square, straddles out across 42nd Street, turns into a wall and sucks in Manhattan Island. Our hero, named Rael, crawls out of the subways of New York and is sucked into the wall to regain consciousness underground. This is the story of Rael.
So Jake, imagine it's 1974, 1975. You're going to see your favorite band play some of your favorite hits from their previous albums, most notably their most recent, Selling England by the Pound, very British album. Out walks the artists. The lead singer, who's known for his theatrics, is on stage, completely silhouetted with the light show, but you can tell he's got the bat wings on, and you just are anticipating Watcher in the Skies coming on, one of your favorites, right? And here he is coming up to the microphone and talking about the fact that they've just written a large lump of music and they're going to play it from front to back for you tonight. And you get to experience one of 102 shows where Genesis played The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway from start to finish.
What a cool experience. It's, I think if you're a Genesis fan in 1975, you'd be pretty upset if you went to the show and they opened with anything that wasn't new, right? And you'd probably come to expect it. But, different strokes for different folks. Either way, that crowd didn't seem too upset. I think they seemed to like the idea. Now, for me personally, I love this album. But this week, I've really kind of struggled to explain to myself why I love this album.
Yeah,
it's a little confusing. But really, it comes down to a couple of key things, right? One is it is an impressive story if you could make it make sense.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think, an important distinction here between the previous album, where it was kind of outwardly stated that the music was first, right? That was a musical album, Selling England by the Pound. We come into this, and Peter Gabriel, just in his intro there, introduced it as a story and music, right? So that is very much a juxtaposition to what we have just gone through with the previous album.
Yeah, likely opening a pretty wide rift between Gabriel and the rest of the members. Clearly, there was a lot of turmoil between the band members at this moment. This album, everybody was doing concept albums. They were just very fashionable at this period in the 70s. And the band did set out to make a concept album, but they did it in a non-traditional way, and they did it in a way that had not been really performed by Genesis to date. So Gabriel set off to be the sole writer of all of the lyrics, thinking that as the creative generator of this storyline, we can only have one person writing the story so that it's cohesive and makes sense. The rest of the guys went off to get it together in the country, and they wrote what I think is some of the best music that Genesis has ever put on an album. And then the two things did mesh together, in my opinion, better than some of the previous attempts where, Gabriel would come in with his lyrics on top of music that was already written, and it would get a little bit busy and cluttered, like Get 'Em Out by Friday or the Battle of Epping Forest. But in this particular situation, this comes together in a unique way.
All right, you just pointed out something here that I think is distinctly relevant to this album, but also to the Genesis story, and we haven't covered it yet. And that's the role that Headley Grange has played in the creation of the previous two albums, at least, right? But the effect that kind of returning there to start the writing process for Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, and what that experience did to the band and maybe for the band. So that, skipping back to Foxtrot and to Selling England by the Pound, these are two albums that Genesis largely composed, wrote all the music, and even with Foxtrot did some recording using the Rolling Stone mobile recording studio, made probably most famous Jarrett in the song Smoke on the Water. Deep Purple had borrowed the mobile to make records, as they talk about when they had gone
Why am I thinking of Beavis and Butthead all this?
Yeah, they'd gone to Lake Geneva. So this is this little mobile record studio has gotten around, and now it had been parked at Headley Grange. I just think that's kind of a neat little story. But the band had a lot of success here, and I think Selling England by the Pound, really the experience of building out that entire album at Headley Grange, and the tightness that they got, kind of co-writing everything together there. I think they were looking for that experience again, right? Because Selling England was a huge success, a commercial success. They had been touring it. It really worked, right? So the band was vibing. They go to Headley Grange, and things don't exactly go as planned.
Right.
Peter Gabriel has a baby, right? Several members of the band are either getting married, some are getting divorced. There's a lot going on kind of in their personal lives. They're not teenagers anymore, right? They're really starting to have some responsibilities here. So they can't just skip away for 3 months and expect to be just completely left alone. And the strain of that has started to show. And throughout the Headley era, or at least the period that they were there for this album, they actually didn't accomplish their goals. They didn't complete the writing process. They didn't start the recording process. And a rift had started to develop between Peter Gabriel and the rest of the band.
That's right. Peter had two big things happening. One, and this wasn't widely publicized even internally in the band, but that birth of his daughter was really on the rocks. There were a number of health issues, and it was very distracting for him. And the reaction that he got from the other band members was not what he was expecting. There was really no compassionate leave offered to him. It was, we are on the clock, and we are expecting you to do your job. Likely largely driven by his old Charterhouse schoolmates, Mike and Tony, primarily. Mm-hmm. At the same time, Gabriel was quite famous for the theatrics that he had put together, and had gotten the attention of William Friedkin, the director of The Exorcist. Friedkin had reached out to Gabriel and said, I would love to collaborate with you, and we can work on films together. And knowing what we know about Gabriel, flash forward 10 years into the MTV era, he's very theatrical. He's very filmmaker oriented. So that offer was pretty significant for him. And he even told the band that he was going to leave because of that offer. And then Friedkin ended up reneging on that offer because he didn't want to be the guy that broke up Genesis. Mm-hmm. And then flash forward a little bit into the tour here, and you had industry bigwigs coming backstage saying, "Wow, what a great show, Peter. Peter, you were electric. Peter, you were the man. Peter, you were great." And the rest of the band members were like, "Well, wait a minute. Like we wrote all of that.
Right.
That is our
It's a collaborative
composition."
effort. Yeah.
Yeah, and so just the amount of tension and strain that kind of carried its way into this album, for them to not really see success in the charts with The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. I think it peaked at number 10 in the UK and like maybe 41 in the US. Today, it's one of the top prog rock albums of all time. Like, I think folks look back at this, a lot of respect, a lot of joy, and just like you and I are going to do, we're going to get into it and kind of experience it and make sure that we do our best to bring it to life for the listeners out there and show it some respect that we think it's due after its 50th anniversary just hit this year.
How about that? Yeah, it's a great album, and part of that is just that the band is continuing to grow. This
Right.
album marks a distinct stylistic change for the group. I think "Selling England by the Pound" is the last time we have the kind of stock Genesis avoid those traditional cadence structures. I think Tony Banks is kind of it's run its course, right? What we have here is much more traditional, if you can use that term, prog rock, right? Where the story is taking the lead role and the innovation of the music kind of steps back a little bit. But the stylistic change for the band represents the innovation here, right? So you don't have these grand Mellotron moments like you had with Watcher of the Skies,
Right.
because it's been done, right? And they've toured it and they've played it hundreds and hundreds of times. So they're looking for a new sound, and they very successfully find it in this album. It's just very unfortunate the pressure that the industry kind of puts on a successful band like Genesis, particularly at a time where an album release involved so much. I mean, today we can just go out and push a button and deploy to Spotify, and your millions of fans can just access your music digitally. In 1975, you had to have a factory press your vinyl. You had to have a printer press the sleeves. You had to order the vinyl. You had to make sure you had enough of it, which meant sourcing the oil. I mean, the band
Right.
isn't concerned with all that, but the business around them is, and so they do have tight deadlines. And there is an expectation that they hit them. And I think just the idea that, that takes precedent over, a guy who might have been your mate, but now he's just in your way.
Right.
And it's just very unfortunate for the band. But the music that comes out of it, it's similar to what I say about The Wall, right? That was when The Wall was written by Pink Floyd. It was a very tumultuous time. They were hardly talking to each other, but the music that came out of it is so spectacular.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah, this is another one of those where the concepts just seem to work, and that's probably 90% of that is experience.
The comparison to The Wall to me is pretty relevant here. Like just what we said at the very beginning, the whole idea of going to see Pink Floyd in concert and then all of a sudden they just drop The Wall on you. And the very first song in that rock opera is really about the fact that what's on stage is not exactly what you expected to come see, right? Mm-hmm. And I think I like to think in some fantasy world, maybe that was a little bit inspired by what we are seeing here with The Lamb. And then obviously The Lamb has, it's very surreal. It's a symbolic journey at times through very strange realms. The themes that get highlight in The Lamb are similar to The Wall, with identity, transformation, self-discovery, isolation, primarily. So just I think it's fun that you mentioned that, but I won't dwell on that. We're here to talk about the Lamb, so I want to kind of jump into it.
Sure. Yeah, and the last thing before we start the music here that I'll point out is that the boys have brought in some bigger guns on the production of this album, and one of those is a gentleman by the name of Brian Eno, who is credited on this album for enosification, right?
Tell me more, because I was reading the liner notes and I was like, what in the heck is that?
Yeah, so Brian Eno is kind of the most famous non-musician there is out there, who had a fantastic, probably 40, 50-year music career. He is a technical guy, and he's best known really as one of the founding members, or shortly after the founding, of Roxy Music, a band that would go on to commercial success in the 70s, but also had a big hit in the 80s that you might remember, Jared. It was More Than This. That was after Brian Eno had left the band, but he was brought into that group not because he was a musician. Of course, he referred to himself as a non-musician. He could work a synthesizer, and he understood the technical aspects of it. He was more of a sound designer, more of an audio engineer, in a time before that was really a coined, like an abstract audio engineer was a coined thing. So he sort of made his own profession just by being an audio geek and understanding what all the little knobs and buttons did on everything. And what he contributes to this album is some of the audio effects that you hear. Particularly when you hear it early in the album, you hear some very low register vocals that appear to be just not naturally generated. And those vocals are coming from the enosification process. What he's doing is applying filters, and he's slowing tape down, and he's doing kind of all these things that are just abstract theories to generate unique sound. To me, it's what gives this album its real psychedelic flavor, right? And that's unique to this particular album for Genesis. I think this one gets kind of the most wackadoodle in a good way. And that's because, again, Eno is there to experiment and to bring his crazy thoughts to the production process, something that the very tight Genesis is not known for. And it affects the sound of this album, to me, in a very positive way.
I think that's fascinating. And just to have your name turned into what is that, a verb?
It's a verb.
Is pretty cool. All right, let's jump in. We have plenty to talk about as the music plays, but we're going to start with side 1, track 1.
Now, I do like how they open the album with Tony Banks again, right? This is a thing.
Yeah, very Firth of Fifth, right?
Very much so. Or Watcher of the Skies. I am to understand that this was kind of a unique fingering. He had to figure out some ways to cross his hands over so he could actually play that part.
I bet. It's a fascinating riff.
Well, you can really feel the gritty difference in this from the predecessor. Now, it was an English album. This one feels like an American album. Right? It's gritty.
Yeah. and it's they don't shy away from it being a rock album. I mean, you're going to hear in these first 3 songs specifically with some really classic rock riffs. I love this line coming up. Really talking about just the over-industrialization of New York and the number of cars on the road and how they all need to quench their thirst with gasoline.
Yeah.
Here comes Rael. In the liner notes that Gabriel wrote, he talks about the lamb really not having anything to do with Rael, not really having anything to do with other lambs.
Yeah.
But there he is, just lying down on Broadway.
I think that's an important distinction to make, though, because so many people would be so quick to jump on the lamb as an allegory for Jesus, right? And so, of course, what is Rael? A Messianic figure. And I think Gabriel is just saying no. No.
Right.
I mean, it just works better than a sheep lies down on Broadway or a cow lies down on Broadway.
He says no a few times. Like as soon as you think you know what's going on, he'll tell you no. There's a few times where Gabriel kind of tells you no, like right here. You start to kind of build this narrative that maybe Rael broke the law, he did something wrong. I mean, he's obviously spray painting in the subways. He's not an upstanding member of society, but they make it sound like maybe he's done something worse. And maybe as these songs unfold, he finds himself in prison or taken away into jail, and you'll hear Gabriel just say, "No, that's not what's going on," and I just love that about this.
That's a dense story.
Here we get into track 2, "Fly on a Windshield," which I know Phil Collins has said this was really their attempt or the outcome of the closest thing they ever did to a Led Zeppelin song. Took me a minute for that to really sink in, but once it really kicks in, you can kind of feel it. It'll feel a little bit like something off of Led Zeppelin 4. So here's where the wall starts to appear. Apparently Rael's the only one that can see it.
And the choice of the name Rael is an interesting one as well. The name was chosen because it sounds nondescript, doesn't sound American or Spanish or anything like that. But they do claim he's half Puerto Rican, although they never define what the other half is. And of course, they go on to find out that The Who had a Rael in one of their songs, and decided to go with it anyway.
Well, yeah, they were big Who fans. I know Phil Collins was a huge Who fan.
That bass is so deep.
Yeah.
I love the effect that they get on it, but it's just that long boom.
Well, and this stage show really saw the biggest drum kit that Phil Collins ever had. You obviously have the double neck guitars with Rutherford. I mean, really high production value. These guys were several 100,000 pounds in debt. And a lot of that was what was up on the stage as they're rocking through these songs.
Yeah, it's a very expensive show. And to do something like this, right, to play start to finish a double album, requires a lot of instruments, and they need to be right there.
Yep. There's a nice transition into the Broadway Medley of 1974. This is track 3 coming up. This song is all about everything you know being opposite of what it should be.
And here we go, right, with the American references on this album, which are going to be almost the same flying at you as they were on Selling England by the Pound, being British references. So we had Lenny Bruce right there, right? Big figure.
Stands alone with his punchline failing. Ku Klux Klans.
There we go.
Soul food, and the band plays in the mood. The cheerleader waves a cyanide wand. There's a smell of peach blossom and bitter almond. Carl Chessman sniffs the air and leads the parade. He knows, innocent, you can bottle all you made. There's Howard Hughes in blue suede shoes, smiling at the majorette, smoking Winston cigarettes. And as the song and dance begins, the children play at home.
Some of our Enosification right there on the vocal line.
Yeah, and I'm pushing pause here because I just want to unpack that Broadway medley. You hit the nail on the head. A ton of American-specific references there. And I said right as the song started playing, it's, to me, this song is about everything being the opposite of what you expect, which I think is an important element at the beginning of this story that we're telling. Where it's almost warning the audience not to really believe everything you see, right? So Lenny Bruce declares a truce and plays his other hand. I mean, clearly a comedian who makes his entire living off of being provocative is not going to declare a truce, right? Marshall McLuhan, the doctor who was really a spearhead in warning folks about media and advertisement and how everything with the media that you choose to tune into is becoming part of your consciousness, is likely not casual viewing, and his head's usually not buried in the sand, right? You've got Groucho with his movies trailing. I don't think any of Groucho Marx's movies really failed. And I don't think his punchlines really had trouble hitting. Mm-hmm. The Ku Klux Klan is certainly not serving hot soul food.
I know that's one of my favorite lines.
as Glenn Miller's "In the Mood" is playing, right? And then Carol Chessman. I actually had to look this one up today. Carol Chessman was like a rapist murderer who got the death penalty. He's not leading any parades, as you hear in this song. And then Howard Hughes in blue suede shoes, smiling at the majorette, smoking Winston cigarettes. Like, you're going to take the most introverted germaphobe out there who and position them this way. This tune really speaks to me as a cautionary tale of what's to come in the rest of the storyline.
Yeah, it's Rail has been pulled through the wall, quote unquote, right? And what's on the other side of the wall is the inverse of what's on this side of the wall. And
Yep.
so it's Bizarro land, right? It's the upside down. And that's where he's woken up, and everything is backwards. You know, the Ku Klux Klan are serving soul food.
Right.
It's just it's just a crazy experience, and all of these things that he knows to be true are now inverted, and what a kind of a mind fuck that has to be.
Yeah, but what a brilliant way to lay it all down lyrically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the British education was coming in clutch here for Gabriel. So now we'll transition into Cuckoo Cocoon. You know me, this has got to be one of my favorites because it's just so darn pretty.
And there we have the return of the mellotron. You can hear it in the string
Nice.
lines.
Nice. I love the vocal effect that they put onto Gabriel's voice here as well. Really just creates this sense, this atmosphere.
The chorus effect on that guitar is just beautiful. It's nice and sparkly.
Some powdered wound, I guess I'm losing touch. Don't tell me this is dying, 'cause I ain't changed that much. The only sound is water drops. I wonder where the hell I am. Some kind of jam. Cuckoo, cocoon, have I come to do something for you? There's nothing I can recognize. This is nowhere that I've known. With no sign of life at all, I guess that I'm alone. And I feel so secure that I know this can't be real, but I feel good. Cuckoo, cocoon, have I come to do something for you?
Really starting to set up the cage here. This is a point in the song where I just feel like they've set it up to make you wonder, is Rael on the run from the law? Did he get arrested? Is he getting locked up? And he just kind of comes out here and talks about it, and Gabriel's like, no.
Locked in some Brooklyn jail, or some sort of Jonah, shut up inside the whale. No, I'm still Rael.
No.
And I'm stuck in some kind of cave. What could have saved me? Cuckoo, cocoon, have I come to do something for you?
Get a little flute solo going here. Now for this transition to the cage, which is track 5 on the first side, I'm going to play the live version from Los Angeles.
I got sunshine in my stomach, like I just rocked my baby to sleep.
From the Shrine Auditorium, January 24th, 1975.
In my stomach, but I can't keep me from creeping.
I love the line about how he's just rocked his baby to sleep, because you know how relevant that is, right? That's a time and place choice.
I never connected that. That's incredible. I just got chills when you said that. I'm playing the live version because In the Cage turned into a staple of the live shows through the end of the 70s. and it turned into something pretty miraculous. It is one of the lyrically dense songs that is on this album that they would go on to play live, but it works, in and out of context with the rest of the story. I mean, there's some bits about Brother John coming up that maybe are a little out of reference if you're not thinking about the Lamb, but it's a great song about being trapped and needing to find the way out. His voice is just so amazing now.
Yeah, and I really feel like he comes into the modern Peter Gabriel on this album too. What we hear here and what we hear on his '80s stuff is pretty close.
Yeah.
Notice how many rock tunes mention stalactites and stalagmites.
Love this bass line. We got a pretty important character getting ready to make his first appearance here in the storyline. To this point, we've been pretty isolated with Rael.
Yeah, this solo by Tony Banks was a nice little piece of improv. He, as I understand it, would play it in 4/4 and just kind of pray in the live shows that it all lined up with the rest of the band.
I love this breakdown here.
I think that's a Del Shannon reference right there, My Little Runaway.
Is it?
I believe it's Runaway by Del Shannon. Yeah, my little runaway. That's the other thing we didn't point it out on the opening song, but there's some musical quotes in this album. On Broadway was quoted there at the very end of the intro to the album.
Right. Almost in a tongue-in-cheek, playful way. So he's gone from the warmth of the Cuckoo Cocoon to now just straight up pain.
Shit goes south. It goes south quick.
I just like the times. It's almost like he just ran out of things to say, and to advance the story, he would just say something like, "And for no other reason, my body revolves." You know, I like that about it. It's almost like, yeah, the lamb here doesn't really mean much.
Don't be confused.
Yeah, I want to tell you about John, but I need to kind of close the song, and without any reason, my body revolves. And so that's how we're going to close out the song, with turning and spinning. He was under a lot of pressure. All right, back to the main recording. So track 6, The Grand Parade of Lifeless Packaging.
And of course, this is juxtaposing the kind of materialism in America, but not a theme that was untouched in Selling England by the Pound. One that really seems to resonate with Peter Gabriel. Kind of the reduction of people to faceless packaging.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, there's an attempt here to tell a little bit of Rael's backstory, where he wasn't running with the best crowd. He had some drama with people in his past, and he can start to see them all on this production line, and he calls out Brother John being number 9. So I think there's a little bit of that goes into this story here. It's also a bit psychedelic, I think. It's a little bit more out there. I have this album on original vinyl, and that deep bassy voice in the background is actually more prominent on the vinyl than on this version that's been kind of remastered for the 50th anniversary, which I think is unique. Adds a little bit of that trippy effect to it on vinyl. So our story has just begun. We've gotten to know who Rael is. We've got some questions about his background, what he was doing down in the subway, what he experienced when he came up onto the street. That apparently he was the only one able to experience it, with the wall of death kind of coming down on him, ending up in a cocoon underground and in the cage, seeing his brother John obviously not reciprocating his need for help, and then all of the people that he has known in the past really being represented here as lifeless packaging. So that's kind of what I've got figured out so far. But, you know, I mean, just some pretty epic pieces of music there. I think Fly on the Windshield is one that I go back to very often because it just fucking rocks. I think the ballad, the Broadway Ballad of 74 also has got just a really unique sound to it. And then obviously In the Cage is a standout.
Yeah, they're, I mean, really opening the album on a high note here, really with a kind of a strong statement. But you can see the distinction here. You know, this is a epic tale, whereas what we've seen prior to this, with the exception of Supper's Ready, really are vignettes, right, by this band. And again, because this is one of the things I do love about this album is that this is Genesis outside of their comfort zone, right? Kind of cutting new trails and doing kind of new things. And I really have a hard time not looking at this album as a direct juxtaposition and almost a attempt to produce the anti-Selling England by the Pound, right?
Sure.
The opposite of that. And from a commercial perspective, you know, there's plenty to unpack there, whether that worked or not. Spoiler alert, it does not work.
Yeah.
But the
Remember,
music and the
41.
music, the album, all stand on their own merit. And I think there's a reason why most Genesis fans kind of look back and say that that this is a great album, right? It's got a quote-unquote cult following, I guess, by the same cult that agrees that early Genesis is awesome. So, hey, welcome to the gang, everybody.
yeah. And so you flip the record over, and you know this is what we'll cover next week. But you get into Back in New York City, but then the two quote unquote hits from this album, the two songs that they did release as singles, Counting Out Time and The Carpet Crawlers. You know, I thank you for kind of introducing me to those songs, and they were kind of the start to my journey here. And that was maybe 2.5 years or so ago. And here I am on the 15th episode of a podcast about this band. So obviously that had a big impact on me, and I appreciate you being on this. I appreciate you being on this journey and bearing with me as we go through all of this. This has been a lot of fun. We will continue bringing Lamb Lies Down on Broadway to you over the course of the next few weeks. And then we will figure out where this thing is going to go after that. Just like the guys did.
That's right. Sounds like a fun time. Make sure you guys tune in. Stay with us here, or we might get lost on the other side of the wall.
That's right.
Mild Mannered Supermen, Mild Mannered Supermen, Mild Mannered Supermen.